It begins in the 60s, trying to figure out how this plant works. Raphael Mechoulam isolates THC. And then a couple years later, 1988, a researcher, Alan Howlett, discovers receptors in the brain and elsewhere that THC activates. She hypothesized, and others, that we did not have these receptors to respond to THC, so that the brain must produce another chemical, an endogenous cannabinoid, that these receptors were designed to interlock with. 4 years later, in 1992, Mechoulam discovers what this endogenous cannabinoid is, and he names it anandamide. And I asked him this question, why would we evolve a chemical that would make us forget short-term memory? This seems maladaptive. I wrote him this in an email, and he wrote me an email back. And he said, well, do you really want to remember all the faces you saw on the subway this morning? All the faces in the supermarket? And I realized at that moment, well, of course. Forgetting is not a defect of a mental operation. Forgetting is a mental operation. And it's almost as important as remembering. Now, he offered this as speculation, and the proof is starting to come in. There was a fascinating article in Nature this summer by Marzicano and a group of other researchers, and they found that cannabinoids are essential in the extinction of conditioned fear and traumatic memory. We need cannabinoids to forget horrible things that happen. And the way they did this was they had mice that every time they heard a certain tone, they got an electric shock. So they conditioned them to be fearful when they heard this tone. Normal mice, you play the tone, and the first time they react fearfully, but you play it enough times and they forget, and they just go about their business. And this is what happens. But these knockout mice that cannot use the anandamide their brains are producing never forget the fear. It is never extinguished, which I think is very interesting, that if you didn't have anandamide, you might not ever be able to get over things like post-traumatic stress, phobias of various kind, neuroses of various kind, even chronic pain. You know, it's often been observed that pain is the hardest of all experiences to summon from memory. You know something felt really bad, but it's very hard to recreate that emotion the way you can recreate other emotions. And it may be that we have the cannabinoids to thank for that. Now, as I've looked at the literature of forgetting, I found that there's very, very little of it. There's a lot more on memory, which kind of makes sense, I guess. Memory is crucial to identity, to culture, but forgetting is really crucial too. For our psychological health, I would argue, for certain spiritual experiences, and even for learning. Memory is important for learning, but so is forgetting. One great thinker who has written a little bit on forgetting is William James. He kind of figured out this point about forgetting. And I'll read you a quote from him. In the practical use of our intellect, forgetting is as important a function as remembering. If we remembered everything, we should on most occasions be as ill off as if we remembered nothing. It would take as long for us to recall a space of time as it took the original time to elapse. And we should never get ahead with our thinking. All recollected times undergo foreshortening. And this foreshortening is due to the omission of an enormous number of facts which filled them. We thus reach the paradoxical result that one condition of remembering is that we should forget, without totally forgetting a prodigious number of states of consciousness and momentarily forgetting a large number we could not remember at all. The ability to forget most things in order to attend to one, well, that's the key to what I hope is going on still in this room right now. Your ability to attend to my words, think about it, depends on forgetting 99% of the sense information coming in right now. Think about all you're not thinking about right now, just for a second. The discomfort of your chair for sitting this long, the whir of the ventilation system, the lights, the architectural detailings, the screen, your dinner plans, your homework, the taste in your mouth, the smells. Forgetting is not just about the past. It's an important thing to remember. To be here now depends on forgetting a great deal of sensory information in the near present, and even forgetting the future too. Worries, anticipations, intentions, all these things can be forgotten also. What I'm suggesting is we can't get from here to there without forgetting. And we will find that it is the cannabinoids that mediate this process.